Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin private track, the closed Facebook group. Every Thursday, members submit questions, other members upvote them, and the most popular ones get answered live each week. So let's dive right in. Let's see, I should also say that next Thursday, there will not be an Ask Me Anything next Thursday because I will already be in Texas on site for the Rogue Invitational, and so the AMA won't be able to happen. So we'll have to bump it. We'll miss a week. We'll be okay. Okay, first most upvoted question is from Paul S., a member of the Linchpin community who recently went down with COVID. And he's been keeping us monitored, and we've been checking back in with him. So here's his question. As you know, I'm suffering from COVID, but I'm hoping to be back to working out again shortly. My question is this. What is the best way to ease back into daily workouts to maximize the effectiveness of the prescribed workout, be it prescribed, scaled, the limited equipment option, or the no equipment option, while not pushing it too far and still achieving fitness? This does not have to be just for COVID, but for anyone who takes a substantial break from training. Fantastic question. Okay, so, first of all, it's 2021. Some people don't use common sense, sadly. So I have to say things that I think would be profoundly obvious. So here's my profoundly obvious statement. Consult a medical professional. Okay, there. I've said my professional. I've said my that. Now let's dive into me giving my opinion on this based upon everything that I've learned over the years. So, okay. Best way to get back into working out after a long break, illness. That illness could be multiple things, not just COVID. Maybe you had a surgery or something like that. So I would say, first and foremost, when you're looking to get back, start with, with the COVID thing, I've had plenty of friends get COVID. They've all been quite fit, and there's been a range in how those individuals felt from I've known a couple of people that absolutely had no question that they got COVID, even though they were extremely fit, got knocked on their butt. And I've had other friends who had no clue whatsoever that they had COVID until they got a test and never showed any symptoms, and they would have never known had they not got the test. So there's been quite a spectrum there. So it's tough to also just say, this is the COVID protocol, because there seems to be such a disparity in how individuals react to that. So, but here's some general guidance that applies to that, to illness in general, to a long break in general, to coming back from surgery, whatever it happens to be. First of all, I would say just start to move, and I'm choosing that word intentionally. So if you think about just starting to move again, and you don't necessarily think about working out again, just calling it moving instead of working out, that might help relieve some pressure, some stress, some anxiety, maybe some expectations about what you used to deadlift, what your Helen time used to be pre-COVID, pre-surgery, pre-illness, pre-whatever the break happened to be. And if you're like, well, I'm working out now and I was working out then, you just don't want your mind to go that way. So think about you're just starting to move again. And that's step one right there. And when you are just starting to move again, initially, my overall recommendation to darn near anybody who's trying to come back would be do less than you feel you should. Even if you feel pretty darn good, do less than you feel you should. And what does less mean? Well, an oversimplification would be there's multiple knobs, think of it that way, that you can adjust down or up with your workouts, and whether you adjust them down or up will dramatically affect the experience that you have. So you have one knob labeled intensity. Dial it down, dial it up. That in and of itself is one of the largest knobs that you can play with to ease back into working out. Dial that intensity down. Loading. You can dial it up, you can dial it down. Go ahead and dial it down. Repetition range. Don't be afraid to knock those down. Now maybe it's a repetition range that's just fine. We're doing a 21-15-9 couplet. But maybe we're doing Angie. That's 100 repetitions of 4 different gymnastics movements. I think the order is 100 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 air squats. Okay, well, you may want to dial down those repetitions. Maybe we're doing the filthy 50s. Dial down those repetitions. And then it could be a number of rounds. Maybe doing a workout that's a 5-round workout. Today, you're going to just dial it down to 3 rounds. So again, intensity, loading, reps, number of rounds. All of those things can be dialed down, and I would recommend you dial them all down initially when you're just starting to come back from whatever it happens to be. And now, it also depends upon what you are coming back from. Okay? There's a huge discrepancy there. Are you coming back from a serious bout of COVID? Are you coming back from an injury? Or are you coming back from just a weekend where you partied too hard in Las Vegas? If it's the latter, if it's just coming back from a weekend partying too hard in Vegas, you're not going to have to dial down everything that I just mentioned to the same degree and for the same duration that you would have to if you were coming back from a major illness, injury, something like that. So hopefully that is relatively obvious and makes sense as well. Reduce everything, I would say, and just move for at least 1 week. Okay, and this is not the coming back from Vegas thing. This is coming back from COVID, sickness, injury, illness, something like that. Reduce everything and just move for at least 1 week and then reassess and see how you're feeling right there. And for that first week, I would use the old mantra that I think trainers should have. But let's say they get a new client into their affiliate. You don't want to just dose that person up on day 1 and just leave them in debilitating soreness so they limp into your gym the next day. If you're first introducing somebody to CrossFit, you want them coming back to your gym the next day after you gave them a bit of a dose, a bit of a workout, whatever it happened to be. You want them saying, when you ask them, hey, how are you doing today? You want them to respond, I'm doing well. You could have given me a bit more. You could have pushed me a bit harder. That's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear, I feel like a train hit me. That was way too much. I almost didn't show up. I feel terrible. So I would want, if you're coming back in, for you to have that same kind of conversation with yourself, and the next day when you wake up and you assess what you did the day before, that you're like, you know what? I could have given myself a little bit more. I feel fine. That's what I would want for that first week. Then go ahead and reassess. And depending upon how that assessment at the end of the week goes, maybe you maintain exactly that course of action with all those same knobs turned down for yet another week, and then you reassess. Or maybe at the end of 1 week, you're like, you know what? I'm feeling good. I'm going to start to dial some of those knobs back up. Whichever is the right decision, make it. Don't let your ego get in the way that if you need to rest for another week or keep those knobs static for another week, keep them static for another week. And then maybe upon reassessment, you need to keep them static for yet another one, because maybe that was a serious bout with COVID or whatever it happened to be. But let's say you reassess and you feel good. Well, then you can start to dial up just one of the knobs if you want. You don't necessarily have to be that crazy, over-the-top, all-or-nothing CrossFitter and dial all of the knobs back up. That would probably be a poor decision. So you don't want to say, hey, I feel pretty good. Starting tomorrow, max intensity, max load, max reps, max rounds. That's probably not a good call. So just gently start to dial those knobs up, or pick and choose which knob you're going to do. Then, reassess. All good, and we're just going to play this game back and forth until you feel that you're where you need to be and you're good to go. Throughout this process, what you can also control to the best of your ability, diet and sleep. So keep the diet and sleep as best as you possibly can. That is going to do nothing but aid your recovery and re-entry back into the world of fitness. And remember, again, if you're coming back from a weekend in Vegas, oh well, you partied hard, you're going to have a crappy few days of working out, then you'll be good to go. But if you are coming back from COVID, injury, illness, whatever it happened to be, prolonged time out, again, back at the beginning of this topic, why I said I would consider that we're just starting to move again, not necessarily work out, I chose that terminology intentionally, is remember through this process why we're working out. Okay, we're working out. As far as I know, no one that I'm talking to pays their mortgage based upon their athletic performance, and they're not trying to keep their sponsors happy so they can still have the money to take their kid to the dentist. You're working out to stay happy, fit, healthy, maintain a high quality of life, be able to do all the wonderful activities that we want to do for as long as humanly possible on the face of the earth, while making good decisions and having knees, back, and shoulders that feel good. That's why we do it. It's not necessarily to PR. PRs are great. Who doesn't love a PR? Kari, I hope everybody gets one every single solitary day. That's not reality. So again, during this process, think about, why are you working out? And hopefully when you think about why you're working out, maintain that great quality of life for as long as possible and being pain-free. That will help you make good decisions and not rush back too quickly. So that's that. There was one other thing I was going to touch on there, but I think it's just, I'm making a note. I think that's a separate podcast topic in and of itself. So sorry for the cliffhanger, but we'll circle back to that. All right, so excellent question, Paul. Second most upvoted question was from Emma M. And she asks, this is another good one. How to balance time constraints and mobility issues? Great question, because I live in that world. Not enough time, and I was just born tight as a drum. She says, I struggle in the overhead position. It's like you're talking directly to me, Emma. I struggle in the overhead position. Previously, when I worked on my overhead mobility almost daily, I did see improvement, but unfortunately, with limited time with work, exams, and just general life commitments, currently I do not have the time to give to mobility that would make me see measurable progress. In workouts where an overhead squat or snatch is programmed, for example, we did the overhead squat row intervals last week. Should I forget the overhead squat and do front squats, or take away a couple of the intervals and maybe just do 3 of the intervals instead of 5, and that would give her maybe an extra 20 minutes to try to mobilize and actually be able to do the overhead squat for those intervals? Or am I missing the point of the workout, which was intervals and intensity, etc., etc.? So, fantastic question. This is going to be one of those questions where I don't want to say it's not going to make everyone happy. That's not the proper phraseology there. But to some degree, Emma, you answered your own question in the words that you wrote. Because, I'll get there. So, basically, I also think it might come down to whether your range of motion is restricted based upon just tightness, and therefore you do see benefits when you work on it, and you mentioned that, so maybe that's what it is. Or is your range of motion limited due to some sort of mechanical restriction just due to injury, surgery, etc., that it's not going to improve? Doesn't sound like that's the case, because you said when you worked on it, you saw improvement, so we're going to assume it's that one. Now, the tough thing is also, in my experience, I know very, very few people that had, for example, let's say really tight shoulders, like really tight. And then they were super dedicated with their stretching and achieved some great range of motion because every single day they were so maniacally dedicated, and they just hammered it with incredible consistency, and it improved and improved and improved. As soon as those people that I know stopped, they just lost it and they went right back to where they were. It's not like whatever you got, you just kept forever. It had to be like constantly maintained. So you're right. As soon as life got busy and you could no longer dedicate that big chunk of time, boom, the gains that you made and your flexibility went away. I've seen that happen over and over again, and I have lived that life personally as well. So now, this is what I'm saying. It may not be a popular answer, but here's the truth, the real answer, and why I think that you somewhat answered your own question. In my mind, this just comes down to economics. Working on your flexibility comes down to economics. And what I mean by economics is allocating scarce resources to the best way that you deem appropriate. So scarce resources, in this case, meaning time. You only have so much time. And you outlined in your question, maybe this time that you used to spend stretching has now been eaten away by, where do you say here, work, exams, and just general life commitments. I don't have the time. That might be the answer to your question right there. To improve the areas that you just said you need to improve is time intensive. So you need to make a personal decision as to this very scarce and precious resource that you have, your time each day, that a certain amount has to go to work, a certain amount has to go to exams, a certain amount has to go to meal prep, a certain amount has to go to personal care, a certain amount has to go to whatever other potential commitments you have outside of yourself. And then are you going to carve some of that out for your stretching, or are you not? It's literally coming down to something that simple. Now, you might not have 20 minutes each day. If we observed your life, that might be true. However, I think that most people could find 20 minutes if they wanted to. And there was an example I gave in a previous podcast in which we called something the drone of scrutiny. And the drone of scrutiny was thought experiment. If we just had this small drone that hovered over your head, it was totally invisible, totally silent. You didn't know that it was there. And it recorded every minute of your life for several weeks. And we went back and reviewed the tape. Would we say, upon actual unbiased analysis, this individual literally does not have 20 minutes a day? Sorry, doesn't exist. Or would we review the tape and see a certain amount of time of wasted on social media, a certain amount of time on meaningless television or Netflix, a certain amount of time on whatever it happened to be, that if that individual so chose to eliminate those things from their life, they could then regain this amount of time that previously didn't seem like it existed, and therefore use it for flexibility or something like that. Now, Emma, I am not saying that that's what the drone would find in your life. I'm saying that most of us, myself included, if we did have that drone of scrutiny looking at us, probably even those of us that are really busy putter away a little bit more time over the course of the day than we realize we do. I think most of us are guilty of that. So potentially there is some 15 to 20 minutes each day that you might be able to harvest and get back. And that would be the best case scenario. If not, then like I said, economics is a cold science. Then if you are just simply choosing to spend your time somewhere else, or life has dictated that you need to spend your time, whether you want to or not, somewhere else, then you're absolutely right. There's nothing you're going to do about it. Your flexibility is going to suffer because it does take time. That is what it is. However, I've got off track, as I always do. However, if you know some things that work well for you, maybe you could put those into your warm-up every day and touch them every day. Even if you can't do it for 20 minutes, maybe you can do it for 10, maybe you can do it for 7. But doing it every day, the consistency is so key. So to use myself for an example, because I also suffer from tight shoulders, and it takes me a long time to warm up my squat as well, because I've got plates and screws holding my pelvis together. I would benefit personally if every day I did the Bergner warm-up as part of my warm-up. We do it probably about twice a week at Linchpin. It's programmed, but the warm-up that I provide in the private track is wonderfully detailed and will get you exactly where you need to go. However, it should be seen as something which is fluid and dynamic, meaning if you need to modify it for your life, you should feel free to modify it. If it's a 3-round warm-up and you need to do 4 to feel warm, great. If it's a 3-round warm-up and you're warm after 2 rounds, you don't need to do the 3rd round. But what I'm also saying is if through all the warm-ups we've done, if you have learned what works really well for you personally to get your tight shoulders loosened up, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you making a nice abbreviated portion of whatever those movements are and touching them each day as part of your warm-up, even if we're not going overhead that day. Because then you're going to touch it a little bit each day, and over the course of weeks and months, will probably lead to a better overhead position for you than trying to find 20 minutes somewhere else during the day that it just doesn't seem to have. When you walk into the gym and you're going to warm up anyway, do a little bit of it every single solitary day. Let's see. So getting back to your question as well, so let's take that example of last week we did that interval work that had overhead squat in it and then some rows, I believe it was. Your question was, look, it's 5 intervals. There's a warm-up I would need to do to actually get into an overhead squat position. Should I spend the time? Because if I do, I'm not going to have time to do all 5 intervals. I might only do 3. But I could swap out that overhead squat, make it a front squat, then I would have the time to actually hit all 5 intervals. Okay. This is where people don't like my answers, I'm sorry. But there's not just one answer to that, okay? So I'm kind of in the same boat as well. It took me a while that day to warm up for my overhead squat, but I was actually able to do it. If you had the time to warm up and hit as the overhead squat, great. If time was not your friend that day, right, economics, and you had to get in and get out, well then the choice has been made for you. You don't have the time on that particular day to spend as much time as would be needed to get into the overhead squat position. It looks like it's going to be a front squat, and you will get perfectly fit, life will be great, and you'll be fantastic. If it works out on that day, and you can go ahead and do the overhead squat warm-up that you would need, great. Also, if you just made the decision, hey, you know what? I am going to just cut it from 5 intervals to 3 today. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do my overhead squat warm-up, and I'm going to hit 3 intervals with this overhead squat, and I'm going to pour my heart and soul into it. Yes, the workout of the day called for 5 intervals. Now you only did 3. That doesn't happen every single day, though. That was just happening on this one particular day. You would be just fine by doing 3 really hard intervals. You'd be fine because we don't overhead squat every single day, so you don't have to make this economic choice every single day. The next workout tomorrow wouldn't have an overhead squat, so you didn't have to shortcut it. You could hit it just as it was, probably the next one after that, and then when the next overhead squat day comes around, then you're kind of forced with this choice as well. So most of your workouts, you don't have to make this choice. So even though on this one particular day, doing 3 rounds, 3 intervals instead of 5 is 60% of the work, mathematically speaking, that's not what happens every day when you work out, because we're not overhead squatting every day. So it's not like every day you're forced to make a choice to only do 60% of the workout. Most days you're hitting 100% of the workout, and every now and then you have to make this choice. So since it's an every now and then sort of a thing, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself if you choose to do the nice prolonged warm-up and then only do 3 out of 5 intervals every now and then. You will be just fine. Let's see, where are my notes ahead here? I have to make these choices every now and then as well, because it does take me a while to warm up my overhead position for something like an overhead squat. I've got busy life, busy job, 3 kids, 16-week-old baby, all that kind of stuff, so I frequently don't have the time that I would like to have as well, and on those particular days, I sometimes have to make a similar decision that Emma has to do. And every now and then on one of those days, I might choose the limited equipment option, the dumbbell track, because it takes me less time to warm up to do dumbbell power snatches and some dumbbell squats than it would for me to do an overhead squat. And so I can still get in a fantastic warm-up if that particular day hasn't given me the time in an ideal world that I would like to have for that workout. So it's absolutely possible. And here's another thing, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. We overhead squat because it has value. Hopefully that's plainly obvious. There's nothing why would I program something that doesn't have value? So nothing is a throwaway item. Nothing is just fluff, right? Everything we do is there for a reason because it's beneficial. With that being said, if you had something going on personally, let's just say you just had a mechanical issue, doesn't matter how bad you want to overhead squat, that you will never overhead squat ever for the rest of your life. And so every time an overhead squat came around, you front squatted. You would still be wonderfully fit. You would be fantastic. The overhead squat is great because of the demands upon the midline, the demands upon positioning, the demands upon range of motion. It's incredible variance. It is a fantastic movement. That's why we do it. But if you just never could do it for the rest of your life, you'd still be okay. Because there are still 75 other functional movements that we do that you can do, and you're still getting beautiful programming from varying of the rep range, the loading, the time domains, the movement patterns, the whole 9 yards, that you'd be good to go. So do it when you can, and when you can't do it, don't beat yourself up too much. And yeah, I think that's that. All right, excellent question. Final question of the day. This one is another one that just put a smile on my face. This is from Zach M. Zach, where are you, sir? Here we go. This one's going to resonate with everybody. How do you balance a lifestyle of making good food choices 95% of the time with a family that is not concerned at all about food choices? My in-laws are constantly asking us to go to dinners or restaurants that are not the best choices. How do I explain that I'm not going with them because of their food choices? I love some pizza and I love Mexican food nights, but I cannot do that as frequently as they do and maintain long-term health and fitness mindset. What a good question. So, Zach, you find yourself in an impossible position for multiple reasons. Just the way that it's phrased there, if your in-laws aren't of the same mindset and health priorities as you are, food is such a polarizing and personal topic anyway that just stirs up such emotions and passion in people, and there's a big just social component tied to it as well. They go out not necessarily for the performance value or nutritional value of the food, but just to be social and have a good time. That's why they're going out. It's not to improve your Fran time. You've got a different goal. That's a tough one. They're probably never going to understand that, and especially with your in-laws as well, people that you're going to have to be around probably for the rest of your life. Taking some sort of a hard stance, you then run the risk of potentially fracturing that relationship long term and causing damage with relatives that you're going to be around for the rest of your life. And so it's not just as easy as saying no. This is why this is a deep, sticky topic and an interesting one. I find myself in similar situations on a regular basis. And I will say this is just for me personally. If we're going out, let's say we're going to go to a pizza place, is like something that Zach mentioned. Maybe if you know that's coming up at the end of the day, maybe previous to those meals, your breakfast and lunch or whatever it happens to be, you can modify in some way, shape, or form to know that pizza's coming that night. And here is another point just to consider. If you do go to the pizza place and you've eaten well the rest of the day, I don't know how your in-laws would feel about this, but if they see you eating something, at least it's social, right? You can go to a pizza place and just have one single slice of pizza. It's very challenging to do because pizza's so delicious that it can be easy to have 4, 5, or 6. Well then, yeah, you just threw a hand grenade into your day. But if you ate pretty darn well previous to that meal, and you ate well the day before, and you go out, you have a single slice of pizza and a glass of water, and you're talking and having a good time, you might be able to appease the in-laws. We're all out, we're having a good time, it's a social endeavor. Hey, look at Zach having a slice of pie with the rest of us, he's such a good guy. That might do it. So again, there's no need to eat a tremendous portion. Maybe you could say I had a big lunch, something like that. If you go to something like a Mexican joint, I think you can actually make some halfway decent choices. Maybe not ideal for you, but If you get something like some chicken fajitas that come with a bunch of sauteed or grilled vegetables, yes, I'm sure they use far more oil in them than anybody would want. I get that. But if you get some fajitas, some chicken fajitas, you get the grilled vegetables there, comes with a little pico de gallo, you got some guac on the side, you've got some rice there, have some of the rice, whatever portion is appropriate. Don't wrap them up in the tortillas. You're just having chicken, vegetables, rice, and some guac. You can probably make that work. And again, especially if you knew that was coming and you did something appropriate at breakfast and lunch as well. You go somewhere where there's a burger on the menu. This might just be me personally. I don't fear a burger. I go out and get myself a cheeseburger. I'm even going to have the bun. I'm not going to ask for it lettuce wrapped. I'm going to have a bun. Now, and I don't have good genetics. I'm not just magically lean for no reason. But I've found that I can have something like that and consume the bun. But what's the killer for something like me is the fries. I don't have the fries. So I just go out, I have the burger, maybe you can get a side salad with it, and that's a nice kind of middle ground as well. And if you're going to a restaurant that has burgers, they may have fish, they may have chicken, they may have steak, they may have something else on the menu. But in almost any restaurant that you go, not anyone, maybe you're going to Dairy Queen, but almost any restaurant, there's going to be something you can do on the menu that, again, while it may not be ideal, it also won't be the end of the world. And then the next thing is just controlling the portion of which you eat. Maybe the portion that they serve you is wildly inappropriate, and just eating 1/3 of that is all that's needed. But there is no easy solution because food is such a social deal, and people who are not into working out and eating well, they just don't understand why you're quote unquote being weird and why you're just not being fun, and they probably think that you have the food issues and you've got some weird stuff going on, and to a degree CrossFitters may, but I do believe there is a way that those two worlds can coexist. What I do not think is effective and what I have not found to be worthwhile is, hey, maybe it'll work for you, but for me personally, just drawing a hard line in the sand and being like, we're not going to go out with like if I said to my wife, we're not going to go out with your parents anymore because of how they eat. That might do more long-term damage to my life and my relationships than me just having to go to the restaurant and try to make the best choice possible. So hopefully that is of some assistance to you. You know what I should do? I should ask EC from Optimize Me Nutrition to kind of make maybe choose the top few common restaurants out there, or maybe get a couple menus from a couple breakfast diners, a couple menus from a lunch place, a couple menus from a dinner place, and say, hey, in these real restaurants, what are the choices that you would make off the menu? And make them tough restaurants, kind of like you're saying, because it is possible. It is. It's just not necessarily easy. Okay, let's end with a few Linchpin shout-outs here. First one, thank you, Ken. Ken left a very kind comment today, and he asked me anything. It wasn't a question. So Ken said, not a question, but thank you for the beautiful programming you provide us with. Not a day goes by where I don't see some ridiculous workout posted online that was just hard for the sake of being hard. And I think to myself, I'm so glad our coach thinks about our safety and longevity in CrossFit and not just what looks sexy on social media. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. And yeah, there's social. God bless social media. There's some stuff out there I've got no interest in. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. Okay. Oh, this next one is entitled Beer and Ice Cream, so you know it's going to be a good one. This is from Patrick E. This is from a while ago. He says, hey all, I need some assistance on the nutrition front. I've always been fairly consistent with workouts, hitting 4 to 5 a week, but over the last month my nutrition has slipped a ton. Eating ice cream a few days a week, having 3 to 4 beers a night, etc. I'm in the process of moving my family across the country, so the stress level has been very high. I really need to get this under control, and I can't seem to do it. Any suggestions or encouragement would be greatly appreciated. And there was a huge response to his post offering tips, tricks, encouragement, things like that to help him get back on track, people sharing their lessons learned, what worked for them. But point being, as I've said before, life is a team sport. Life is not an individual sport. So that's what the Linchpin community is for. That's what the private Facebook group is for. And wherever you are, hopefully you have a support network that you can lean on, be open and honest with, be vulnerable with, be authentic with. And if something is going wrong in your life, that people are there to pick you up. And so it always makes me happy when I see the Linchpin community doing that. Okay, next one from Joseph M.G. Joseph, you are a dedicated individual, my friend. It says, no sleep, but a track day. So our baby woke up at 4:30 in the morning. The 6-year-old, that doesn't sleep longer than 5 hours, then came in to lay in our bed when he heard his baby brother wake up. Not long after that, the 3-year-old came in too. I got the baby changed, fed, and went back to bed. The 3-year-old was asleep on my side of the bed, and the 6-year-old was watching another one of the children on my side of the bed. The alarm was going off in 15 minutes. This is at like 5 in the morning. So I laid the 3-year-old back to bed, and then went to the track as soon as my alarm got off and got this done. What I love about this is how insanely dedicated some people in our community are. Again, there's always a reason why you could say, my day was hard, I didn't sleep well, something, there's always a wonderful, valid reason to potentially miss the workout. And then there's a group of individuals that choose not to give in to that reason. And no matter what, I'm sure Joseph didn't want to go to the track at 6 in the morning. But that's when he knew he could get it in before the day got away from him. So he went and did 6 400-meter repeats at 6 a.m. That is a dedicated individual. So good on you, Joseph. And to everybody else out there just making it happen, hang in there. We're all in this together. Enjoy your rest day, and I will see you again later.